Welcome to pod_official, and thank you so much for tuning in for the third and, yes, the final part of this deep dive. We are wrapping up our massive exploration into decision-making, rationality, and all those fascinating biases that, really govern how we see things like risk, wealth, and ultimately our own happiness. If you enjoy shortcutting your way to being well-informed, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future deep dives. So our mission today is to move from the theory, all that groundwork we laid with prospect theory, and jump right into the real-world applications. And some of these are just stunning. We're going to look at how tiny things, like a reference point or how a choice is framed, can completely change our behavior even when the outcomes are, mathematically identical. And then we'll wrap it all up by seeing how this stuff influences everything from how you invest to public policy and even how we remember being happy. Okay, so let's set the stage. The core critique of rationality, the big finding that really just broke classical economics. The old model, from thinkers like Bernoulli, assumed that satisfaction utility is all about your final state of wealth, the absolute number. But it's just wrong.
It's completely wrong. It's what we call Bernoulli's error. And it's a huge one. It just totally misses the psychological weight of the reference point. A purely rational agent, what they call an econ, should only care about the final number in their bank account. But humans, we just don't work that way.
Right. We don't judge things in a vacuum.
No. We judge them based on the change from where we started. That's the reference point.
And the best way to get your head around this is that classic Jack and Jill story.
Oh, yeah. It's perfect.
So imagine both Jack and Jill, at the end of the year, have a net worth of exactly $5 million.
Identical outcomes. According to Bernoulli, they should be equally happy. Same wealth, same utility.
But here's the twist. You have none of their starting points. Jack started the year with only $1 million.
So for him, it's a $4 million gain. He's on top of the world.
He's ecstatic. Now, Jill, she started the year with $9 million.
Oof. So for her, that same $5 million is a $4 million loss. She's miserable.
Exactly. Their satisfaction is completely different, even with the same amount of money. The reference point codes the outcome as either a huge gain or a painful loss, and that feeling just overrides the number itself.
And that takes us right back to the three pillars of prospect theory we talked about. The first is what we just saw, reference dependence. Everything is seen as a gain or a loss from some neutral point.
Which is usually just the status quo, right? Where we are right now.
Usually, or what we expect, or what we think is fair. Second is diminishing sensitivity.
Okay, so that's the idea that the first $100 you get feels amazing. But going from, say, $9,900 to $10,000, you barely notice it.
Precisely. The emotional impact gets smaller as the numbers get bigger. The curve flattens out, which is why we get risk-averse with big potential gains.
Right.
The little bit extra isn't worth the risk of losing it all.
And then the big one, the one that basically runs the show.
Loss aversion. We hate losing way more than we enjoy winning the same amount.
And the sources give a specific number for this, the loss aversion ratio.
They do. For most small stakes money gambles, it's about 2 to 1.
2 to 1. So to get me to flip a coin for $100, you'd have to offer me a chance to win 200 if I'm right.
At least. The pain of losing that $100 feels subjectively twice as strong as the pleasure of winning it. And that simple asymmetry just blows the whole rational actor model out of the water.
So that asymmetry combined with diminishing sensitivity, that leads us straight into this thing called the fourfold pattern of risk.
Yes. This is where it all comes together.
Yeah.
It shows that our attitude to risk isn't random at all.
Yeah.
It's predictably irrational. It flips completely, depending on whether we're talking about a gain or a loss and a high or low probability.
Okay, let's walk through it. Let's start with high probabilities, the upper left quadrant, high probability gains. So, specific choice. Would you rather have a guaranteed $900 for certain or a 90% chance to win $1,000, but a 10% chance of getting nothing?
Now, the gamble has a higher expected value, mathematically. It's worth $900. Wait, no, it's a 90% chance to win $1,000, so that's $900. But the first option is certain.
Oh, right. So the expected value is the same. Let's adjust that. Let's say a 90% chance to win $1,000 versus a certain gain of $800. The gamble is clearly better on paper.
Okay, in that case, with the gamble being better, most people are still intensely risk-averse. They'll take the sure thing. They'll take the 800.
Why?
It's the certainty effect. That jump from 900 to 1,000 because of diminishing sensitivity, it doesn't feel that big. But the fear of disappointment, that risk of walking away with nothing, That feels huge.
So we'll actually give up expected value just to lock in a sure thing.
We overpay for certainty.
Right.
That gap between 99% and 100% feels psychologically enormous, much bigger than the gap between, say, 50 and 51%.
Wow. Okay, now let's flip it. The mirror image. High probability losses.
The lower left quadrant. So the choice is a certain loss of $800
Yeah.
or a 90% chance to lose 1,000 with a 10% chance you lose nothing.
And here's the reversal. People become hugely risk-seeking.
Massively. They choose the gamble. They'll risk a bigger loss for that tiny sliver of hope of losing nothing at all.
And that's just pure loss aversion, isn't it?
It's pure loss aversion.
Yeah.
The guaranteed pain of losing $800 is so awful that it pushes them to gamble, to take a crazy risk, just to have a chance to avoid it.
So for gains, we want the sure thing. For losses, a sure thing is so painful we'll do anything to avoid it.
That's the reversal.
Yeah.
And it explains so much, like why people take losing cases to trial or why companies throw good money after bad on a failing project. They're in the domain of losses, and they're desperately seeking risk to get out.
And just to complete the picture, the other two quadrants.
Low probability gains lottery tickets. We become risk-seeking. We overweight that tiny chance of a huge win. We call that the possibility effect. And for low probability losses, like a house fire, we become risk-averse and buy insurance because we overweight the small chance of a catastrophe.
The whole pattern is just, it's predictable and
Yeah.
completely irrational.
Exactly.
Okay, that irrationality brings us perfectly to the next idea, how just owning something, just the act of possession, creates a reference point and triggers the famous endowment effect.
The endowment effect is really just loss aversion in action. The second something becomes yours, giving it up is framed as a loss.
And because losses feel twice as bad?
The price you demand to sell something just skyrockets compared to what you'd be willing to pay to buy it in the first place.
The sources have that great kind of absurd example with Richard Taylor's friend, the wine collector.
Right. So this professor, he buys these nice bottles of wine for maybe $35. Years later, someone offers him $100 a bottle, and he says no. He won't sell.
But he also wouldn't dream of paying $100 for that same bottle if he saw it in a shop.
Never. And that's the paradox. Standard economic theory says there should be one price, what's worth to you. But once it was in his cellar, part of his endowment, giving it up, became a loss. And to make him feel that pain, the price would have to be, way, way higher.
That's a great little story, but the real proof was that famous mug experiment.
Oh, yeah. The mug experiment by Kahneman, Netsch, and Thaler, it's just a beautiful, clean demonstration of the mechanism.
So how did they set it up?
They took a class of students and split them into 3 groups.
Yeah.
You had mugs, like university logo mugs, and some nice Swiss chocolate bars. The first group, the sellers, they just gave them a mug. Here, this is yours.
Okay, so the mug is now in their endowment.
Exactly. The second group, the buyers, got cash and were asked what they'd pay for a mug. And the third group, the choosers, they could just pick one. Get a free mug or get a free chocolate bar.
Now, if people are rational, the price the sellers demand should be pretty close to what the buyers are willing to pay.
It should be almost identical. But it wasn't even close. The sellers demanded, on average, about twice as much to give up their mug as the buyers were willing to pay to get one.
Twice as much.
Roughly $7 versus about $3.50. It's that 2-to-1 ratio of loss aversion right there in the data. The simple act of owning the mug for a few minutes made giving it up feel like a $7 loss, while getting one just felt like a $3.50 gain.
And the choosers proved it wasn't about the mug itself.
Exactly. The choosers were split about 50-50, half wanted the mug, half wanted the chocolate. So the items were seen as roughly equal in value. The huge price gap was only because of the pain of giving something up, of loss.
It's incredible. It means a simple market transaction isn't two people trading things of equal value. It's one person experiencing a gain and another person experiencing a loss, which are just fundamentally different feelings. Okay, so we've seen how reference points distort value. Let's shift now to how we distort probabilities, especially at the very ends of the scale, near 0 and near 100%.
This is so important. It's the probability weighting function, and it explains both lottery tickets and insurance policies. Our brains just do not handle extreme probabilities rationally.
Let's start at the bottom with low probabilities, the possibility effect. Basically, why do people buy lottery tickets when the odds are so terrible?
Because the jump in our minds from a 0% chance of winning to a tiny, tiny non-zero chance like 1 in 300 million feels enormous. That possibility of a life-changing win has a psychological value, a hope value. that is way, way higher than its actual mathematical worth.
So we're buying the dream, not the odds.
You're buying the possibility. Now, flip to the other end of the scale, the certainty effect. This is where we underweight high probabilities.
So the difference between a 95% chance of winning and a 100% chance feels way bigger than it actually is.
Disproportionately large. We massively overvalue absolute certainty.
Okay, let's use that legal settlement example. Your lawyer says you have a 95% chance of winning $1 million. The expected value is $950,000.
Really? But you get a settlement offer for $910,000. That's 40 grand less than the expected value.
Why is that offer so tempting?
Because of the psychological relief of certainty. That $910,000 is a sure thing. The 5% chance of getting nothing creates this anxiety, this sliver of doubt that feels so uncomfortable. We are willing to pay a huge premium, $40,000, just to eliminate it.
We trade real money for emotional peace of mind.
All the time. And this bias, this pull of certainty, is what leads to a famous breakdown in logic called the Allais paradox.
Okay, explain this one. It's supposed to be definitive proof that we aren't rational.
It is. It shows that we violate a basic rule of logic called the independence axiom. So imagine a first choice. Option A is you get $1 million, 100% certain.
Yeah, okay, I'll take it.
Right. Option B is an 89% chance of that same million, a 10% chance of 5 million, and a 1% chance of nothing. Most people pick A. They take the sure thing.
Of course. They're risk averse because of that certainty effect.
Exactly. Now, a second, different choice. Option C is an 11% chance of winning 1 million and an 89% chance of nothing. Option D is a 10% chance of 5 million and a 90% chance of nothing.
In that case, there's no certainty. It's all just a long shot.
And that's the key. With certainty gone, people often flip and choose D, the higher risk, higher reward option. They go for the 5 million.
But that's a contradiction, isn't it?
It's a total logical contradiction. If you preferred A over B, you have to prefer C over D mathematically. The structure is the same. But because option A offered that magical, irresistible lure of certainty, it made us risk-averse. Take away the certainty, and we suddenly become risk-seeking.
So our preferences aren't stable. They're warped by the context.
The certainty effect is so powerful, it makes us break the rules of logic. It just proves the psychological model is what's really happening.
Okay, next up, a huge application of this thinking. How we organize money in our heads. We don't treat all money the same. We put it into different mental accounts.
Right, this is Richard Thaler's work. It's the idea that we have these little mental buckets for money. Vacation money, grocery money, fun money. And the rules for each bucket are different. Economics says this is irrational. A dollar is a dollar, but it's how we manage our own psychology.
And the classic example is the lost theater ticket.
Perfect illustration. So a woman buys an $80 theater ticket. She gets to the theater and realizes she's lost the physical ticket. Does she buy another one?
Now compare her to a woman who gets to the theater, opens her wallet, and realizes she's lost $80 in cash. She still has enough money to buy a ticket.
The financial situation is identical for both. They're down $80. But the woman who lost the ticket is far less likely to buy a new one.
Why? What's the mental difference?
It's the accounts. For the first woman, the entertainment account for that night is already $80 in the hole. Buying a second ticket makes the show feel like it cost $160. That feels outrageous.
But for the woman who lost cash,
the loss comes out of a general cash account, which feels kind of separate. Buying the $80 ticket still feels like a normal $80 transaction for entertainment. The label on the money changes everything.
wow. And this kind of mental trickery has huge effects on investing, right? The disposition effect.
A huge, costly effect. The disposition effect is the proven tendency for amateur investors to sell their winning stocks way too early.
To lock in the game.
To get that psychological win, yes. And at the same time, they hold on to their losing stocks for far too long.
Because selling would mean they have to admit they made a mistake.
Exactly. They refuse to close that losing account. They tell themselves, it's just a paper loss, it might come back. It's pure loss aversion, and it's a terrible investment strategy.
And that refusal to admit a mistake is the heart of the sunk cost fallacy, throwing good money after bad.
It's the exact same mechanism. The classic business example. A company has already spent $50 million on a project that's failing.
A sunk cost. It's gone.
It's gone. To finish it, they need another $60 million. But a brand new project comes along that also costs $60 million and promises a much higher return.
The rational choice is to abandon the first project and take the better one.
A rational econ would. But what do real managers often do? They pour the extra 60 million into the failing project.
Why on earth?
Because killing the project means they have to officially book that $50 million loss. They have to admit failure. And the desire to avoid that, to maybe, just maybe, make the initial investment pay off, is so powerful it makes them make an objectively worse decision for the future.
We've seen how reference points shape risk and how mental accounts mess with our investing. I mean, if you're finding these kinds of insights useful for, cutting through the noise in your own life, now is a great time to hit that subscribe button. We really do appreciate the support.
Okay, let's turn to something a bit more subtle. How these reference points define our sense of fairness. Oh, this is fascinating. Our judgments about what's fair are almost entirely based on reference points. We are incredibly sensitive to actions that feel like an organization is imposing a loss on us, even if it makes economic sense.
Let's use that photocopy shop example from the research. It draws a really clear line.
It does. So scenario one, a local factory closes, unemployment shoots up, the shop owner cuts an existing employee's wage from $9 an hour down to $7.
And the public reaction.
Overwhelmingly negative. 83% of people surveyed called that unfair.
Because the $9 wage was the established reference point.
Correct. The owner is seen as exploiting the situation to impose a direct painful loss on the employee. The public feels the owner's right to protect their profits doesn't trump the employee's right to their existing salary.
Okay, now scenario two. The $9 an hour employee leaves. The owner then hires a new replacement at the new market wage of $7 an hour.
Now, 73% of people say that's totally acceptable.
Even though the wage is the same, the new person is still only getting $7.
But the crucial difference is, for the new hire, there's no loss. Their reference point is the current market, or zero. The owner isn't taking anything away from them, so the action is perceived as fair.
So fairness isn't about the absolute number. It's about not imposing a loss from an established norm.
That's the core of it. We accept an employer failing to provide a gain much more easily than we accept them imposing a loss. It's why wage cuts are so toxic in a company culture.
This even shows up in sports, right? The golf example.
Yes, the golf study is amazing. It's loss aversion on the putting green. In golf, the reference point for every hole is par.
Right. A birdie is a gain, a bogey is a loss.
And researchers analyzed thousands and thousands of professional putts. They found that golfers are significantly more accurate and successful on putts for par, where a miss means a bogey, a loss, than they are on similar length putts for birdie.
So the fear of getting a bogey is a more powerful motivator than the desire to get a birdie.
Much more powerful. Loss aversion literally makes them better putters. We are loss avoiders first and gain seekers second.
Okay, this has all been about how we make choices. But now we need to talk about how we evaluate our lives after the fact. This brings in a massive concept, the difference between the experiencing self and the remembering self.
This is, I think, one of the most profound ideas in the whole field. They are two different entities. The experiencing self is the one living in the present moment, feeling pain, joy, boredom, second by second.
And the remembering self.
The remembering self is the storyteller. It's the part of you that keeps score, that constructs the narrative of your life, and this is the critical part, it's the one that makes all your future decisions.
And the problem is, it's a terrible historian. It gets the story wrong.
It's an extremely biased historian. It doesn't care about the whole experience. Its memory is dominated by two things: the peak end rule and duration neglect.
Okay, break those down. Peak end rule.
The memory it creates is basically an average of the most intense moment, the peak and how the experience felt right at the very end.
And duration neglect.
It almost completely ignores how long the experience lasted. The duration doesn't really factor into the memory.
The famous colonoscopy experiment is the painful proof of this, right?
The definitive and, yes, very painful proof. So patients undergoing a colonoscopy rated their pain moment by moment. One group had a standard, shorter procedure with a painful peak and a painful end.
And the other group?
The other group had a longer procedure. It had the same painful peak, but the doctors deliberately extended it for a few minutes at the end with a lower but still uncomfortable level of pain.
So their experiencing self literally suffered for more time.
Significantly more total pain. But when asked later which procedure they remembered as being less awful or which they'd prefer to have again,
They chose the longer one.
many did, because its end was less painful. The remembering self, applying the peak end rule, created a better memory of the longer ordeal.
That's insane. The part of us that makes decisions is actively choosing more total suffering for our present self just to have a better memory later on.
It's a fundamental conflict inside our own heads. The remembering self is optimizing for a good story, not for a good life, minute by minute. And this is why we're so bad at predicting what will make us happy. We're constantly miswanting.
So how does this play out with big life questions like money and happiness?
Well, it depends which self you ask. If you ask people about life satisfaction, that's a question for the remembering self, an evaluation of your life story, then yes, money absolutely correlates with higher scores. Richer people rate their lives as being better.
But if you measure the happiness of the experiencing self, the day-to-day moods,
Then you see something totally different. The data from Gallup is very clear. After a certain point, more money doesn't buy more experience happiness. Emotional well-being, on average, doesn't really improve once the household's income gets above about $75,000 a year at the time of the study.
so beyond that point, more money makes your remembering self think you're happier, but your experiencing self isn't actually feeling any better day to day.
Exactly. It doesn't fix traffic jams or arguments or chronic pain. It just buys you a better story about your life.
And this ties into the focusing illusion.
Perfectly. It's the mistake we make when we think about how something will affect our happiness. We focus on one single obvious factor and ignore everything else.
The California versus the Midwest study is the classic example here.
It is. You ask people in the Midwest how happy Californians are, and they say, oh, much happier. The weather is amazing. You ask Californians, and they think they're happier too because they're focused on the weather.
But when you actually measure their daily moods,
No difference. When you live in California, the nice weather just becomes the new normal, the new reference point.
yeah.
Your experiencing self is actually dealing with traffic and high costs, which you ignored when you were just focusing on the sunshine.
Our ability to adapt just resets the baseline.
It's called hedonic adaptation, and it's incredibly powerful, even in extreme cases, like people who become paraplegics. After an initial period of devastation, their reported day-to-day happiness levels often return surprisingly close to where they were before the accident. The system adapts.
Which is a blessing when tragedy strikes, but a curse when we're trying to choose what will make us happy in the future. We're always chasing peaks and forgetting about the duration of the everyday. Okay, so this brings us to the really practical part. If we know people have these biases, how can we use that knowledge for good? How can we create nudge policies?
This is the whole point of applied behavioral economics. If people are predictably irrational, then we can design what's called a choice architecture, an environment that gently nudges them toward better decisions without taking away their freedom to choose.
And the most powerful tool for this seems to be the default choice.
By far, it leverages inertia and loss aversion. The organ donation example is the slam dunk case.
Right. In countries where you have to actively opt in to be an organ donor, check a box.
The rates are terrible, maybe 15%.
But in similar countries where the default is you are a donor unless you opt out,
The rates shoot up to 99% or higher.
just because of the default.
Just the default. Changing from the default feels like an action. It has a cognitive cost. People are loss averse to the status quo, so they just stick with it.
Yeah.
And in this case, it saves thousands of lives.
We also see the power of framing in public health messages, which gets back to that idea of denominator neglect.
Right. Our intuitive system 1 is terrible with statistics, but great with vivid images. So if you say a vaccine has a 0.001% risk, that's abstract. System 2 has to work to process it.
But if you frame it as 1 in 100,000 children will be paralyzed,
You create a powerful, terrifying mental image of that one child. You neglect the denominator, the 100,000 healthy kids, and focus on the numerator. It drives fear and anxiety completely out of proportion to the actual risk.
and this flawed framing can even trap experts, like with the whole miles per gallon illusion.
Oh, that's a brilliant example of bad choice architecture. We think improving a car's fuel efficiency from, say, 30 to 40 mpg saves more gas than improving a gas guzzler from 12 to 14 mpg.
It seems obvious, a 10 mpg gain versus a 2 mpg gain.
But it's completely wrong. Because mpg isn't a linear scale. If you do the math over 10,000 miles, the small improvement on the gas guzzler actually saves about 40% more fuel.
Wow, so the way we measure it actively misleads us.
It's a cognitive trap built right into the unit of measurement. A better nudge would be to use a linear measure, like gallons per 100 miles.
Yeah.
Then the better choice becomes intuitively obvious.
All of this really allows for smarter policies like the Save More Tomorrow retirement plans that use our own biases for our own good.
It's just a mature acknowledgement that we're not perfectly rational, so we should build systems that protect us from our own worst instincts.
What an incredible journey this has been over 3 parts. From challenging the rational actor to the details of loss aversion, and finally to these two conflicting selves inside all of us.
It really covers the whole landscape. We've seen that it's all about perceived changes, not absolute states, that we are wired to avoid losses, and that our memories are flawed storytellers that often lead our real selves astray.
So, to bring it all home for everyone listening, to make it really stick, what are the 3 most actionable takeaways from this entire deep dive?
Okay, number one, beware the reference point. Every single time you make a big decision, stop and ask, what is my reference point here? Realize that the pain of a loss is almost always going to feel exaggerated. Challenge that feeling. Ask how you'd see the choice from a neutral starting point.
Good one. Number 2.
Challenge the frame. When you're given a choice, especially with risk, actively reframe it. If they tell you the mortality rate, calculate the survival rate. If you're thinking of selling a stock, don't ask if you're admitting a loss. Ask the rational question. If I had this money in cash right now, would I buy this stock today? It bypasses the emotional trap.
And the
Prioritize the experiencing self. Your remembering self is a biased storyteller, obsessed with peaks and endings. Stop trying to optimize your life for the photo album or the highlight reel. Focus on the actual quality and duration of your daily experience. Reducing the frequency of small negative things will probably do more for your happiness than chasing one big, amazing peak moment.
The big insight, really, is that the story of a situation, the way it's framed, the narrative, often matters more to us than the cold, hard logic of the outcome.
And that's exactly why we're not econs. We're humans. Far more interesting and far more predictable in our mistakes.
As that story about the customer returning the dead parrot taught us, sometimes all you need to realize a theory is flawed is to just see that the parrot is, in fact, dead. And the rational economic model, in the face of all this evidence, seems pretty deceased.
And the first step to making better choices is just to acknowledge that our own irrationality is predictable.
That was the end of this deep dive. Thank you again so much for joining us for this third and final part of the journey. If you appreciated the level of detail and synthesis we brought to this, please take a moment to subscribe to pod3cast_official. We genuinely appreciate your support. Until next time, keep challenging your assumptions and stay curious. Goodbye.